We ready, Tom? Good evening. Welcome to the February 13th Village Board Work Session. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. I imagine there are some, I know I have some announcements, but I bet I'm not the only one. Who else has announcements? Please, go ahead, Trustee Herrera.
No noise today. Good evening, everyone. How are you? I just a weekly reminder that it is still winter outside, as we have experienced the past week more than ever, and the emergency shelter is open. If you are a resident that is 18 or over that needs a place to stay, all you have to do is meet in front of Open Door Family Medical Center on Main Street, and a staff member from the Emergency Shelter Partnership will meet you and take you to a warm place where you'll get a meal. You'll be able to stay for the night and also get a warm meal and some items to go in the morning. That is open Monday through Sunday, and it goes from different host locations. So anyone that is in need of shelter, all you have to do is meet in front of Open Door at 9 p.m. Monday through Sunday till the end of March. And seeing that Johnny G's here from the Elks, I know tomorrow's pasta night at the Elks Lodge. Yes, on Valentine's Day. So you have no excuse to bring your loved one to your date. And it's from 6 to 8 o'clock at the Austin Elks Lodge. Only $10 a person. Can't beat that. So, thank you.
Anyone else with announcements this week?
That was actually Valentine's Day. Good reminder. No, actually, I'm going to do it later. So, no, thank you.
Okay. Well, Debbie and I just spent a couple of days in Albany. Was there anything on the side? No. In Albany at the NICOM conference, which is the New York Conference of Mayors, and I think it was a time well spent. It was really interesting. It was cut a little bit short because of the upcoming snow, but we kind of just scooched everything from Tuesday onto Monday night and got to talk to some of the legislators that night about the state initiatives. But there were a couple of big topics that I'll give my colleagues here and anybody interested a little recap on. We've talked a lot about AIM funding in the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of messages saying to the governor, please do not take away our AIM funding, which is funding that goes to municipal governments each year, and for the village of Ossining, it represents over $200,000 of our general fund revenue, and that would be a significant loss for us. It's about 1% of our the revenue that we raise in our taxes. So we very much do not want the governor to do that, and we're not alone. Mayors from across New York State got together and had a little press conference in the middle of our conference on Monday, and I hear rumors that I don't know if we can totally take credit for the Westchester municipal officials and the NICOM officials taking photos and saying, please don't take away our AIM, if that's the only reason that it might come back. But we've heard some rumors that it might go our way. So we're crossing our fingers that that's the case in the final budget. But then the other big topic that's subject related is marijuana. Governor Cuomo has proposed that he may, the New York State may soon become the next state to legalize recreational adult use of marijuana. And of course, the questions at NICOM are very much related to what does that mean for municipal governments? Because it would be a state regulation that might change the law. So what does that mean for us? And the way they're approaching it is from a public health perspective. I had some other questions, which it was a really valuable session that I attended with two of his special counsels, one of them on public health and one just a special counsel to the governor, as well as a woman who was instrumental in the implementation of adult recreational marijuana use in Massachusetts and what their experience was. And the goal is that New York State, if they move forward, would learn from the experience of all of the other states and hopefully have fewer hiccups, and it would be a smoother process. Now, I am not for or against it. That is not my position. But if it happens, I am very much for making sure that the municipalities are in a good position for it. The governor makes a real point of saying this is a public health issue. They do talk about social justice as the concern because it is certainly disproportionately impacts people of color in our state and across the country. So the decriminalization is one piece of it, but But the reality is, and this is what I said repeatedly in conversations during and after the session with the governor's representatives was, but there will be a lot of revenue related to it, and that'll be going to the state. And what they do with that revenue matters to us in municipalities. Right now, villages and towns do not have the right, though some people think that they do, but I did talk to the mayor of Pleasantville. People think that Pleasantville has banned recreational marijuana use in their village. What they passed was a symbolic resolution. What a municipality could do is they could change their zoning regulations to limit where marijuana dispensaries could be, which is what we did with adult entertainment. It's what we did with pawn shops. But what I learned was the marijuana industry is a lot more than just dispensaries. It's also the laboratories, which can have a dozen people taking the chemicals and transforming them. And quite frankly, that's a very different kind of business that I don't think would have the same kind of pushback in our community. So really what I learned is there's a lot to learn. And I will share with all of my colleagues here as well as folks in the community, because it already is a topic of discussion on social media and in a variety of conversations. February 27th, NICOM, which is, as I mentioned, the New York Conference of Mayors, having a summit on the legalization of cannabis. And it's happening in Albany from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. I may attend myself, but I certainly would encourage anybody who is interested in this topic to attend. For now, what I'm asking NICOM to do is figure out how, if there's revenue that the state's going to get, how it can come back to municipalities, especially municipalities that may ultimately have some impact of dispensaries or of adult legalized recreational marijuana usage. So big topic of discussion for the next year or two in New York, and I'm glad to have gotten sort of in on the beginning of that conversation with the folks in Albany. The other topic that came up while we were in Albany and has been continuing for the last couple of days is related to the county. There is a proposed sales tax increase in the county. There's going to be a public gathering tomorrow of mayors and supervisors with the county executive. It would bring the county sales tax for most of the county, other than the big cities that have their own tax rate, up to the same level of all of our surrounding counties. Rockland, Putnam, and Nassau and Suffolk already have an 8.75%. We have a 7.75% right now in most of Westchester. White Plains, New Rochelle, and Mount Vernon also have an 3/8 rather. So it would bring us to be on par with the others. But then the bigger topic of discussion is, what does that mean for us? And for the village of Ossining, it would mean an additional $1.27 million in tax revenue if the sales tax continues as expected in the coming year. So it could be a significant increase in revenue stream for the municipalities. It is definitely going to be a significant increase in revenue for the county, and as we know, they are in a financial position that is not ideal after some interesting budgeting decisions for a number of years. We've all had lots of conversations about what is regressive tax versus a progressive tax, and that was definitely part of the discussion. There were some pretty decent arguments made that property taxes for many people in our community particularly, and also for seniors who are on fixed incomes, are also difficult for people to meet, and raising property taxes precipitously to make up for the deficit in the county would also have an adverse effect on folks who are struggling in our county. So there's no easy way to take money out of people's pockets and redistribute it. But this is an interesting approach, and I was impressed with some of what I heard from members of the county executive's office about their commitment to having a very low, even 0% tax rate increase as a goal in the coming years, and they have a pretty in-depth plan, and I look forward to working more with the county executive's office on that. On a lighter note, putting on my hat for the documentary and discussion series, March 7th at 6:30 at the Ossining Public Library, the movie She's Beautiful When She's Angry, which is a look back from 50 years ago when the feminist movement began, and women activists up through today. So please join us. As always, it's free to the public, beginning at 6:30 at the Ossining Public Library, Thursday, March 7th at 6:30 p.m. Wow, that was a lot. Debbie, do you want to add anything to our NICOM experience?
So I got to attend all the budget, money, and grant sessions, and I really was grateful to have been there because they gave us so much information on what they're looking for in the different grants. So the grants that we submitted last summer were all well written, but the level of detail that they were looking for wasn't there. And now I think that we really have a much better understanding. What that means for our community is that it's going to be important for us to do the legwork up front, meet with homeowners that need their homes fixed, and really get the documentation that shows that they qualify, their home needs repaired, get bids for the construction. You know, it's that level of detail that they're really looking for. So if we're able to do that this year, then we will have a much stronger opportunity to be successful. The opportunity zone came up, and unfortunately we were not selected this year to be in the opportunity zone. They will not be opening that opportunity to any municipality for 10 years. So we do take quite a few calls to see if developers can invest in an opportunity zone in our community, and the answer is no, unfortunately. When I asked them if they thought maybe somewhere down the line in that 10 years, if they thought there was an opportunity to open that up to other communities, he did not think that that would be an option for us. However, I still think that it would behoove us to be ready just in case. So we will be working, it's not a priority project, but we will be working to put documents together that show what we can do and how we could utilize that and be ready just in case. But I'm very sorry to say we won't have that opportunity anytime in the near future. But it was a great opportunity to meet with other mayors and a few other managers that were there just to talk about money. And I got quoted in the paper on the AIM. So it's like, don't take my money away. So it was really good, but thank you.
Excellent. Anyone else? All right. So we move on to food trucks.
Whoever wishes to talk about it, sure.
Well, I guess I'll introduce it and invite anybody else who wants to comment on it, because I think all we're only at is we don't have a proposal at this stage. Stuart, I know that your predecessor this is a topic that's come up for discussion more than once, and hasn't made its way all the way to a proposal, but there are some existing laws in the area that there's some examples that we might be able to draw from if we wanted to, and you have that wealth of information for us there.
Yes.
It came to us from members of the community. They're interested in being able to have food trucks in the village. Currently, we can have ice cream trucks and the guy that does coffee and comes to construction sites, but our law is really not designed for anything that we think of as food trucks today. And we have with us here tonight representatives from the Chamber of Commerce. We have the owner of First Village Coffee, and we also have a resident who came to my office 2 months ago and said he was really interested in having and correct me if I misrepresent this, but your parents who are retired or semi-retired, you thought that they would really enjoy having a food cart, and that's something that you had looked into, and as a sort of a later in life career for them, and that's not possible here in the village of Ossining. And so he's a person who's done some research and has some proposals of his own. So the idea was to bring it to the board for some brief discussion and consensus on how do people feel about moving forward with Stuart working with any interested stakeholders to draft a proposal for us to consider at a future meeting.
I'm sorry. So I saw this, I think, on the agenda. It was sent out. You sent it out Friday, or you put it on the website on Friday, something like that. Yep. So I didn't know what the conversation was going to be about. It's new to me, but Stuart, I don't know if I updated you. I had a chance, but since you're doing a lot of the research, you should know that I feel really badly. I saw that Trustee Herrera sent something out to the chamber. He's the liaison to the chamber. I feel a little bit awkward. I had on Monday the meeting with the Park and Rec Advisory Board, I should have said something that it's on the agenda in case they missed it, because we too have looked at possible food trucks in both the town and village parks, and takes on sort of a different shape and form. There's different kind of intricacies, so I'll have to maybe hear what is being said, because this, I guess, came to us from people in the community, and here I'm actually bringing it forth. But just put that in the
Sure.
portfolio of ideas. Jackie Shaw and I, who are the liaisons for town and village, have discussed it for a couple of months. I was going to bring it up when we discussed updates from where I liaise, but obviously might as well do it now. I just publicly will say I apologize to the council and Marlene Cheatham, the chair of that council. I should have said something on Monday in case they also wanted to be here, but they'll be able to see it on video. So welcome to the people. I don't know how you're gonna.
Well, I mean,
You probably have legislation from Portchester and other surrounding communities.
I have Peekskills, I have New Rochelle's. They all vary, and they all, Trustee Basemar, have fairly similar in terms of, the food truck has to be at a specific location. It's assigned to that location. New Rochelle actually does an RFP. They have, their manager is allowed to designate, I believe, 5 or 10 locations, and the various vendors will bid on which location they wish to be at, and the winning bid gets that particular location. I believe it's for 2 years, might be 3 years. Other places, in most of the places, the municipality decides where that food truck, what is the best places for the food trucks to be. In New Rochelle, it's at 2 of their large parks, 1 outside the high school, and there's 2 other locations I just don't recall. Basically, the trucks, they get licensed. They're going to have a certain amount of insurance. They obviously need their health license from the county. There are certain restrictions as to where they can be. As I said, in most of these municipalities, what you find is either they say where they can't be in terms of X number of feet from a school or near an intersection, or specifically where they can be located, and they list where those locations are. The license is not transferable, so you can't give it to your friend, you can't give it to anybody else. You're the only one who can use it, and you're basically able to operate. New Rochelle makes it very clear. For example, they do not provide any services to the truck operators. So they don't provide water, they don't provide, electricity or anything. It's all got to be contained within the truck. But there are various municipalities within Westchester that have them. What we don't have in our code is specifically a definition of what you might want to call a food service vendor. We just have an overall peddler license, but that's something that can be done. But it's fairly common throughout Westchester.
So my question is, I've seen sometimes we've had things at the waterfront, and there's been a couple of food trucks in the area. Of course, when we've done our village fair, we've had a couple of food trucks. What in our code has allowed for those food trucks to be there versus us doing something a little more permanent?
As relates to the fair, I'm not sure, because and our friends from the Chamber of Commerce may be in a better position to actually answer that, because I know it's actually run through their auspices. Down at, I think that if there are food trucks, for example, down at the when they have the Earth Day. Now that may be actually at Engle Park, so I don't know if those trucks are there. That would be on a town, town as compared. Now it gets a little, the border gets a little odd there, as we know. But so I don't know what kind of permit has been issued by the clerk's office. It may be a one-day vendor permit, which would just be require it and make sure that they have their particular food license and things like that. So I'd have to double check with the clerk's office as to what they've issued in those particular cases. What this would be a more permanent solution, so that if someone wanted to have it, they could have it at this particular location for a particular period of time.
And so for Peekskill, I'm kind of familiar with the food truck in Peekskill. Does Peekskill have certain hours?
Yeah. In fact, all of them have hours. Most of them generally go like 8:30 a.m. till 7:30 or 8 o'clock p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Mount Vernon's actually goes to 7:30 p.m., but as it gets later into the summer, it goes to
No.
8:30, and then it goes to like 10 o'clock at night. But most of them have hours like that. Some of them have it that if it's going to be near a school, it can't be at the school from a half hour before the school opens until a half hour after dismissal. But most of them generally seem to let them operate for about 12 hours.
Well, but that was a good question. How do you guys do? You bring food trucks in. Oh,
So the town and village, from what I've seen and my experience, when it comes to special events, because it all falls under the special event category, and it's only either 1 day or 2 days, and
Got
because it's been done by a nonprofit, it's usually just been authorized through the host entity, whether it's the chamber or the Portuguese Center or Green Ossining. It's usually just done through them, through that entity, and usually all they have to do is, if they're selling food, they have to go through the Westchester County Department of Health and get their 1 day food permit, unless they have a separate permit that allows them to just operate outdoors. That's my understanding of it. The chamber can chime in or correct me if I'm wrong.
Welcome, Johnny.
Trustee Herrera says is essentially correct with regards to the village fair. We do require them to get a food permit, and the food inspector from the county actually comes the day of the fair and inspects each location to make sure they're up to code.
so parks also, is there a difference between parks and other locations, or just locations that we would designate?
In a lot of these, Trustee Levin, they actually don't permit the food trucks in parks. In most of them, they permit them on the road outside the park,
Oh, I
but
see.
not physically in the park. So, for example, in New Rochelle, they have some very large football and
Yeah,
baseball fields.
yeah.
You can be outside those fields, but they're not actually letting you physically onto the field. Other
Oh,
ones, so I think that it could be it could be worked out that way. They won't actually let the truck within the perimeter of the park.
And what about private companies? So let's just say that Chillmark, the shopping center, wanted to have a food truck on the property or down in the Arcadian. I ask this because I know Regeneron once a week runs a food truck day. Universities run food truck days. They all park up, and I know for sure Regeneron, and actually in some cases they do it for their employees, sort of free. I don't know if that makes a difference because they're not making money. I'm just asking questions because this is all new to
Well, I
me.
know that a lot of the regulations do not permit vending or peddling on private property. So what that may be then, for example, in the case you raised, is there may have to be something special for that kind of circumstance. But a lot of these, the Ossining Code itself has a restriction in that, is that you're not allowed to basically vend on, or peddle on private property. Now, there are ways that you can, there are things that you have to deal with that. I think that's primarily people who go, you're not allowed obviously to go door to door under any circumstance. If you're in a parking lot area, that would probably be more the responsibility of the property owner. But still, if the village would be in a position to have to give a permit. If the village were determining that there are only these particular locations, that may not be an approved location. But the village could also have it where there may be sort of, if you want to call it, wild card locations, where on a particular day, a particular, as you said, Arcadian might want something, or Chillmark might want something. Something could be done that way. But you'd have to have it so that they could be at that particular location. Because generally, in that circumstance, it's more a one-off in the sense of the person. What most of these licenses in these municipalities deal with is someone's getting a food truck and they're going to be there for 2 or 3 years at that particular location. They're basically saying, this is where I'm going to be. That's how it's specifically done in New Rochelle, because as I said, you bid on the location and you go from there. That's not, New Rochelle is the only one I've come across that actually does it as an RFP. And the other thing what some of these have is that if you select a location and there is a brick and mortar business that is within 200 feet, this is what we also have in our own code, that would potentially be in competition and objects, the peddler would have to move to another location. So in other words, let's call it the tenant would have the ability to say, well, he's serving the same thing I'm serving, so basically, I don't want him there. And you would have the ability to do that. And Ossining has that in its code now, and there are other municipalities that have the same type of restriction.
So can I ask, I guess, a general question? And that was sort of like the introduction that the mayor did. So is it the will of the board to try to move forward with a legislation that will favor food trucks in our community, in our village? I guess that's the main question. And then we can have Stuart do more deep research and stuff and put something, a draft together so we can actually have a discussion. But in reality, I would like to listen to some of the public that has come here and would like to say something about the particulars on the food trucks. So that'll be okay.
Sure.
Just before we invite the public, so I'm a supporter of food trucks because entrepreneurship nowadays is not just a brick and mortar business and can be done in many, many ways. So I just want to find out. I think that I can't speak for the whole board, but I think we're all open to finding a way to make this work in our community, especially because it's pretty good addition to have in a community like ours, and it's being done all over the country in a very positive way. My only concerns that I kind of want to work through are kind of what Corporation Council stated, so how the business community feels, the brick and mortar businesses, is there a way to have a conversation and get the necessary feedback from local food establishments as far as if we even decide to have a conversation as to how far one should be from a food establishment or an entity that serves food or makes food or produces food, whatever you want to call that. And then we also have to look into the residential component, right? So having a truck that's running while it's operating there all day, right? So other apartments or homes next door. Is it a quality of life issue or other sound issues? I only have experience with Portchester because I did events there, and they only their model is actually only certain days out of the year in parks. So they I think they have 5 or 6 dates that you pick one, or I think it's 1 or 2, and then so for example, the Capitol Theater is allowed to have it only in special events, and that's why it's never there all year long, because you could only apply for up to like a certain amount of days. So if we could find a way to look into basically the brick and mortar buy-in, that the village isn't trying to compete with you or get you out of business, or but we just want more opportunity for more vendors in different types of ways. I would like to learn what that looks like, and because Ossining is now, I call Ossining a leader in sustainability and green practices. What does it mean when you have a truck that's running all day and has waste and noise, and how do we address that and mitigate that wherever those trucks are? And I'm happy that the chamber and some vendors are here today, so thank you.
Yeah, so I think what's clear already is that there's a lot of variables and factors to consider, and how can we craft legislation that's going to meet the needs of our village and create people, enhance our local economy rather than create unforeseen problems. And Catherine, or anybody from the chamber or anybody from the First Village, okay.
Good evening. My name is John Van Steen. I'm a representative of the Greater Ossining Chamber of Commerce. As you're aware, the Chamber of Commerce has been engaged with vendors and food trucks for many years by way of the Village Fair and the other special temporary events. We support these hardworking entrepreneurs and potential small business incubators that can be a welcome addition to the economic vitality of our community. If we are considering passing a local ordinance for an ongoing food truck presence in Ossining, the chamber and business community should be directly involved with the collaborative research and planning of this action. With the prospect of updating the comprehensive plan in the near future, Ossining is yet to be in the planning phase of future economic development. Perhaps food trucks can be written into that plan as a means of encouraging up and coming entrepreneurism and promoting future innovation in our community. Shorter term, in consideration of our struggling economic engine, we must move methodically and consider the impact of this proposal. Given the collective enthusiasm for a proposed food truck venture, there are also several factors warranting careful consideration to help protect our existing brick and mortar businesses who over the years have invested heavily in Ossining. Many of these businesses carry a heavy financial burden and continue to struggle managing expenses and paying taxes, notwithstanding additional competition. The average cost of opening a brick and mortar small business is approximately $480,000, while the average food truck startup may range from $30,000 to $100,000. There are several other obvious comparisons to be made which warrant further discussion. In addition to specific food truck permits and operational guidelines, the Chamber is urging the village to move carefully and responsibly by considering all affected by this venture. As an example, cities such as Boston have abided by the food truck promotion and restaurant protection provision. Under this provision, food trucks must be 1,000 feet walking distance from an established brick and mortar food business restaurant. Furthermore, consideration is also warranted in the area of food trucks standing without detracting from already minimum parking in more densely populated areas. As Ossining continues to grow, it is the Chamber's hope that we can work collaboratively in special ventures such as this and other innovative 21st century plans and projects to further the prosperity of our wonderful community. On behalf of our membership, local businesses, and the Greater Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, yours in business, the Chamber, Gail Marshika, Director. Thank you.
I want to ask some questions. Yeah.
If you were Gail, thanks.
John, can I ask a couple of questions? Or Johnny, doesn't matter. So are there current food businesses that have shown interest in adding to their portfolio by having food trucks?
With that, John,
Yes, a few of the local businesses have expressed an interest in having a truck at different events.
Okay.
Not on a regular basis.
No, I understand. Right.
You know, going to like the village fair and things like that. And we've had local businesses participate in the village fair.
Yeah, I mean, the food truck industry, first of all, I love the way you call them peddlers, because that's like my father used to talk about peddlers. I don't even know what that is anymore. But, you know, the food trucks, I think there are people that now open food trucks that upwards of 100,000 in lieu of, because they're going fishing where the fish are. You know, I mean, it's the Uber model, right? It's just a totally different model, but they could be chamber members and they could be current. And you've had requests from those. I'm just asking questions. I've like no skin in the game here. I'm just asking some questions. So food truck operators can be chamber members if they want to join, so they have a voice in all of that. And in what you guys have been looking at, and you have had interest from current brick and mortar restaurants who want to have food trucks at events.
On a minimal basis. I mean, nothing concrete where they said, I have to do this. More minimally mentioned in conversation. I wish I could do something like this. Gyro Uno would love to come to us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They're everywhere else.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
One of the members that I can speak about.
All right.
To piggyback on what Omar said about Portchester, I work at the Capitol Theater occasionally, and I did have a lot of contact with the food trucks down there. Two of the food trucks from there actually come to the village fair. They are highly regulated. The reason being, if the Capitol has 1,800 people coming to an event, there's not enough restaurants. And they work with the restaurant. Some of the food trucks get actual product from the restaurant next door, type of a thing. So it's a little bit of a different model. But they're out there. I mean, personally, what I feel is I'd like to see them maybe at an event or near a park, not near another restaurant, because it's just too expensive to run a business. We had a recent restaurant open up, put a lot of money into a restaurant. Now, what if a food truck came around the corner? That's not fair.
With the same food.
Yeah.
Yeah, the difference in taxes and levies and as much as you charge for a permit. Doesn't come in cost.
Yep.
Understood.
Thank you.
I think what we're basically the chamber is saying is we'd like to be included in the conversation.
Oh, no.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just asking more questions than
All right.
John already said.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Hi. So I'm Catherine Carena. I'm co-owner of First Village Coffee with my husband. We definitely are in support of moving the conversation forward, finding out how we can do this responsibly. and in a way that's fair to, I think it's important, like Omar was saying, I think we have to see the small business landscape as an evolution. There's online businesses, there's brick and mortar, there's food trucks, there's people who sell at the farmer's market exclusively. And we're all small business owners. So I think that going forward, we just have to make sure that we see it as we're collaborating, not competing. And I mean, if you know, you want to talk about competition, I mean, that's the driver of the economy to a certain extent. And I understand that people put a lot of money into their businesses and a lot of hard work because that's what we've done. But at the same time, we have at least six delis on Main Street, and they're in competition with each other. So to a certain extent, that's going to be part of the conversation. But I don't think that it should pit one model of business over the other. There are literally thousands of communities nationally and internationally that do this. So there has to be something to it. Otherwise, these communities wouldn't be embarking on these type of endeavors. So I think that we just need to look and learn and see what works, and see what works for other people might not work for Ossining. And that's okay. We just have to figure out what works for us collectively. And it's definitely worth a conversation. So, thank you.
Stuart, how much money do municipalities charge for food trucks?
It vary. That I'd have to give to you more specifically, but it varies. Again, the New Rochelle model is you actually bid for the particular spot, and then there's a license fee above that. So
Yeah,
it's
but you know, that sounds like the New York City model too.
Yeah.
All those vendors that for a decade are selling their
Right.
morning stuff, and the cousin comes in the afternoon and sells the evening stuff, and exactly the same spot for year after year after year, because they bid on and they get a yearly. It's a year by year, but
Right.
they get first choice of reopening, and it's thousands of dollars. It's not a minor.
I'd be surprised if there was a demand for that in Ossining.
But
That's not what I've heard
that's
so
an
far.
old model, and that sounds more of what the city of New Rochelle is actually following. As a city, like
Right.
you're there every day.
that was there, but
Yeah.
that was 2016. I mean, they actually.
I
were doing
understand,
that. But I can provide you, with what the localities are charging for those things. That's not a problem.
Right. So it sounds like there's at least agreement that we should move forward in exploring it more and come up with some sort of a draft that meets, a lot of the stakeholder concerns, and share ideas and gather ideas from folks who are interested in it for whatever perspective they're coming at it from. Sound good?
How do we do that?
Right, did we reflect all of your concerns to here? You're good?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh,
How are we
I
doing
forgot
that?
one piece. So we have had a lot of people approach us, customers, community members, saying, why doesn't Ossining have this? And it's coming from people who live here and who are really excited about what's happening in Ossining. They're really happy about the direction that things are going downtown in the community. And we've had a number of people. And so it's also consumer driven. It's not just the businesses deciding what they want, it's the consumers deciding what they want as well. And I think that's important to remember. It's one piece I forgot.
thank you.
How do we do the next step? Is what I'm trying to understand.
So I think it's important for us to, one, get as much, information as possible with respects to different municipalities. Looking at the legislation, I think, given some of the feedback from the chamber and other businesses, we need to definitely include them in the process, right? I think the idea of feet, right? How many feet you're away from a definitely brick and mortar, that's going to be important if we choose to move forward with this piece of legislation. But I think we need something tangible. Right now we're kind of just talking in the air.
Actually, I agree because I think that's part of, maybe Tracy be able to help you with some of the information that we have and using the GIS system, be able to locate some of the businesses and try to put a map together where we can actually say, is this, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, or whatever the radius could be of all the businesses downtown that we have, and any other places that we may be looking into put locations for permanent or temporary food truck locations. So that's something that I would like to see as a part of sort of a draft, or even like just to go to the chamber, be like, this is the map of all the businesses that we have, and that could be a collaboration between the chamber and us, making sure that we have all the locations of all the establishments around the village itself. And, you know, again, that to me will be a key piece for me to understand what that means. So if we can do that, that'll be great.
Yeah, I also think that would be a great visual too, because if you put, you know, a 50-foot or 100-foot ring around every restaurant or whatever you choose, then you start to narrow that scope of where they could go if you wanted them outside of that. It's a great visual. I agree. I'll talk to Tracy about that.
And I just want to say for me also, like understanding the money, right? Because you know the chamber did raise, you know, we get property taxes through commercial rents, right? So really understanding that model and how we receive our money versus getting money from a food truck. I actually think that Mr. Van Steen, I've seen numbers as starting from $50,000 to $250,000 investment of food trucks, and if people are putting up to $400,000 or even $250,000 into brick and mortar, you know, maybe what we might find is that, hey, you know, yes, we should be looking at legislation, but there might be a point in us where we think this actually might be feasible. So just understanding the money, understanding revenue is also important when making this kind of decision.
I see you've taken a lot of notes, Stuart, so you'll help us come up with some of the terms for us to consider and plow through some of the existing legislation that obviously there's a variety of models for us to learn from.
Will do.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Stuart,
Yes, Omar.
I just want to talk this process out. So, whenever we have an actual like draft to consider for discussion, does the board think it's appropriate to bring in our stakeholders that are in here tonight and then have like a broader discussion as to, cool, so the board's looking at this the first time now, and now's a chance for you to look at it and give us feedback? Or I just want to make sure like I just understand how we're gonna use their knowledge and feedback.
I don't think we need to. I think we should be getting feedback during the draft process, so that when it comes here, people have weighed in and we've been able to consider like this concern and that desire and how they can be reconciled. I think that should be part of the draft process. We don't think we need to do that on television with all 5 of us at the table.
Okay.
Right.
So Stuart, you'll email
I'll touch base with the chambers folks.
the businesses that are here and the potential vendor. Okay,
Mhm.
perfect.
Great. All right. 8:15.
Yeah.
All right.
Also,
So,
sorry, can you also? I was just about to email.
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself from the next conversation. I
Oh,
just wanted to-
I'm
Gotcha.
sorry. I was still on the
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was still on the last one. I was just trying to email, but I've lost. The town started doing a study, then didn't, based on the expenses. But Maddie sent me a couple of articles on food trucks. I would also just suggest anybody listening to this, there might be vendors out there or family of vendors. I mean, a lot of times what we do is we send our council and our village manager or each other articles. So if the chamber has a best in class, like this is the ideal place, it's happening in Minnesota and they've got this wonderful way of approaching it, or we call the chamber in Cape Cod and they've got, you should be forwarding that, because it's conversation is also articles. You know, there's so much written about this stuff, not to mention all the shows on TV that I love to watch. And if there is a different story about it, you know, send those articles around. And if, like I said, if you have a case study that you guys think, or somebody back there has something anywhere in the country, it doesn't have to be legislation. It could just be a story that says this is how another community brought this in. I think that would be really helpful to the conversation. So I will send you my article as soon
Thank
as
you.
my phone goes up.
Great. I'm listed as the contact for this next one, so I'll do an introduction, but I'm really not the most knowledgeable person about it. The Ossining Arts Project is a village committee, and we're very pleased. They have a few new members, and they still have the same chairs that they've had for the last year, because they haven't elected their new chairs. So pleased to have Michelle Concha-Herco here representing the Ossining Arts Project. I'll invite you up in just a minute, Michelle. Just to give, I can't remember what board members have been here for what conversations when it comes to the Ossining Arts Project. John Codman was the liaison for many years, and what they're asking for today, and Michelle will clarify it if I misspeak, but is for the village to guarantee $1,000 up front that hopefully would then be paid back in ticket sales that they call an evergreen account. And it's the same model that was used when they did the first jazz festival, and that worked out well. All the money was paid back and went back into the evergreen account. The project that is now on the table was born out of an Ossining Arts Project event that we discussed. It might have even been a couple of years ago, the first time that this took place. In it's a forum where artists in the region of all types are invited to come together and get to meet each other and see if they might be interested in a collaboration. And we're delighted that Tomiko Magario and Ted Daniel are looking to do their a project that was a collaboration born out of one of those Ossining Art Project events. And so with that, Michelle, Tomiko, Ted, whoever's going to speak, please join us.
Hi, everyone. I'm vertically challenged. Okay, there we go. So some of you I know quite well, and some I'm getting to know again. I am co-chair of the Ossining Arts Project. I've been the co-chair for the last 2 years. My co-chair, Peggy Monastra, couldn't be here today, but she's here in spirit, like literally right here. So, but we're here because 3 years ago, we pitched an idea to the board about funding the arts. And part of that was 2 projects. One was the Ossining Jazz Festival, which is now going into its 3rd season, standing on its own legs. So thank you to you guys for helping that happen. The next project that came out of that very same meeting was the Collaborative Network. That is actually something that Peggy brought to the table about bringing artists within Ossining and its surrounding towns together to kind of come and meet, network, get to know each other, talk about what their medium is, what they're interested in doing. The very first one was actually done last year, and it was at the Bethany Arts Community. It was on a Sunday for a few hours, and there was a lot that was interchanged during that period of time. We have another one that will be coming up now at the end of this month. But out of the very first one came this collaboration between Ted and Tomiko. They then had told various people at the Arts Project that this is what's happening, what we're brewing. And it was very exciting for us because it's exactly what that network was meant to be. It was meant to be a place where 2 different mediums could come together and create art. So for them, it's Project Tapestry, and they'll talk more to it, but I'll just give you a quick overview, which is just, it's a live event with music and dance, and which is wonderful because both of them in their fields are very well revered. And Ted is a trumpet player and composer. Tomiko is a choreographer, dancer. They're both using original work, their work, and it's something that they are looking to create over a year's time. So we have this Evergreen Fund that helped the Ossining Jazz Festival, as well as this network, because it was all part of that same Evergreen Fund. And so now we're looking to use $1,000 of that Evergreen Fund to help them get through the first hurdle and have them stand on their own 2 legs. They have, Tomiko is part of Fractured Atlas, which is an umbrella company that helps, they are a 501c3, so they're a non-for-profit, and Tomiko's company is umbrellaed under them. She's looking to apply for various grants, which she'll talk more to that. But in order to do that, in order to be able to apply for those grants, she has to come up with the first $1,000 to then be able to do that. So that's what we're here for. Again, because it's an evergreen fund, it comes back. So, you know, the thought is that it would be paid back in ticket sales over the period of year, because again, they have a very detailed budget and timeline of how they have these performances going through. The first one being at Bethany on May 18th. So without further ado, Tomiko and Ted.
I feel like you're about to perform for us. Go on, Ted.
I'll just. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much.
He's saying that.
Yes.
You have to speak
How's
into
this?
the
Is
upper-
this all right?
It's for the people at
It's for
home.
the people who are watching, not us.
Oh,
We can hear you.
people are watching.
Yes.
See all the cameras?
See, now you wish you brought your trumpet, right?
Again, good evening, Mayor Garrity and board. Thank you very much for letting us come and speak to you this evening. My name is Ted Daniel. I'm an original Ossining resident and a musician and composer. I must add, a Vietnam veteran. I served in the Nam in a band, so I've done music all my life, and I'm really pleased to be home and performing here for my fellow villagers. I was a part of the jazz festival that started three years ago, and now I want to come before you again and ask for your support for another project, and that is the Tapestry project that Tamika and I are starting on. She has all of the good information that you're going to need in order for you to jump on board with us. And so I'm going to let her tell you more about it. Tamika, will you?
Yes.
Please.
Hello. My name. Oops. Hold on. My name is Tomiko Magalio. I have been a resident of Village of Ossining for 9 years. 9 years. And thank you for taking time for us tonight. And Project Tapestry came to get idea got conceived in the OAP event, and first we came out said, well, we really want to do the live concert on the original music and the original choreography, but also my second point, beside performance is a performance, you always want to perform, that's what we want to do. And but the reason that we want to bring this to the village and take a duration of the 12 months is that get the people into the process, show them that this is a process what it takes. So the May 18th performance will be actually more like a fundraising / work in progress performance, and so that will show that what we have done and where we are going to. So as much as a live performance, there will be the one piece created under this collaboration will be presented, as well as my other piece to show, and Ted will be playing besides that piece we are doing together. He will be playing a lot more and to show what our idea is and what we are trying to do. And also when people see the final project, they just say and watch and okay, that's done. But if you bring the people into the process of to just do this much, we took this many times, this much times, this many days, this many people involved. For example, that if I'm going to do the 2 pieces myself, I need a coach, I need a person who gives a class to work with a TED. He has to set whole band together to do the rehearsals. Right, and so these kind of things, I can't show everything, but to do it at the Bethany Arts Community, we can show the part of it to raise the understanding of the people toward the art, and also, well, that's kind of about of it.
Okay.
For now, I think I can keep going on, but then you don't need to hear
Well,
all that.
Well, let me.
But-
I'd like to hear from the board if there's any questions or sort of people's reaction now that we have some sense of what it is
sure.
that you're proposing.
Did we budget for this?
We did. We actually budgeted for the Ossining Arts project $7,000 for them to use over the course of the year. We gave that to them last year for them to use, and it's just
No,
for
we didn't.
different projects, different things. Some of that is for the website that they talked
No.
about, and
No,
but
I don't think it was 7,000.
it's 7,000.
You received $7,000 last year?
We didn't use any of it.
No,
But
but it was in the budget.
It's
in the budget this year too.
It's
No,
earmarked.
we use
It's
7,000.
earmarked for potential projects. Yes, it's earmarked, but it hasn't been touched. But here we are asking for
Got it.
this. Okay, thank you.
So we budget for it so that we have it in case we need it.
Right.
It wasn't actually taken
It
out.
wasn't a check that we sent.
Oh, okay. Good. All right. So it's in the budget.
Yes.
There is a placeholder for it, so that's a good thing. Okay. And are you coming to the village and the town, or just
It's
the
a
village?
village committee.
I know, but they're also performing at the
Bethany?
Bethany, so yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm just asking. I'm not just trying to find out. That's all. Sounds fantastic. I mean,
Thank you.
I've seen you perform somewhere. I've seen, yeah. My husband's a big jazz person. As soon as I saw you, I realized that. Very impressive.
Others with questions or comments?
No, I'm okay. I'll be there on May 18th.
Yeah, I put in my. You didn't tell us what time. You have the opportunity to say time and place, but you didn't
Yes.
say the time.
Well, time we are still working
Oh,
out
okay.
with Bethany and David Leroy, right?
David Lyons.
Lyons.
Mhm.
He has been such a great help about because we come in from how we want to perform, and he gives input of the this is more like people may want from you as an audience kind of thing. So we are rethinking time of the day and the structure of the performance. He has been
Very helpful.
yeah,
Extremely
helpful
Very
about
nice.
that. Yeah.
So, is the sense of, I'm getting the sense of the board, I'm not hearing any objection. Did you want to comment?
You know, it's
Jason?
definitely no objection.
Okay.
I want to thank you guys. It's great to see two awesome village residents give up their time. So thank you.
Okay.
I'm very supportive of the project. My only suggestion to the Arts Council, which I mentioned to John, the liaison last year, was maybe this could be the first event where we do this, is just part of expanding access to the arts, which we're doing in a time where nationally it's being cut. I'm glad that we're being a leader in that, is also to make sure that the access to the arts is expanded, right? So if there's a way that we could work with you to, just make sure that more people can actually get to Bethany, right? There's no sidewalks or bus route there, right?
Oh, I see.
So, and maybe we can get sponsorships, or we could find a way to get like 20 free tickets to kids, families, or seniors that would never be able to actually go to a show, or I don't know.
Wow, that's fun. Yeah, that's a great. That's great thinking. No, we like to talk to you more about what can be possible, because if even this work in progress, we do it once, and if more people want to see it, perhaps we can do the follow-up performance. And I have done some outreach program for the people who sometimes can't come to the show. Sometimes we can take that to the places. Those kind of things. No, well, tour is a different thing, and that we like to get
It's a different
there.
budget.
Yeah, we like to get there eventually once we done with the project and we have a final items. But doing the work in progress kind of things. For example, you mentioned senior. If there is an auditorium in a senior citizen center, can we take it to them? Or that the school has an auditorium, can we take it to them? These are the kind of things, and that perhaps it can be the revenue for the income, because the school has an education budget that are sometimes kept for either they can use it for the science or the art, or that the many companies I have worked with use that money really well from the public school to generate the income as well as educate the audience.
Well, I think I'm hearing that the board is very supportive of allotting the $1,000 of the Evergreen Fund, and we realize it might take a little while to get the $1,000 back because this is a year-long project, and I'm comfortable with that. And especially because it sounds like you're really going to be bringing some top-notch performances to our community, and also making it accessible for that much more of our community. I really like the suggestions of reaching out to seniors and students as well. So thank you.
So the card I just passed out, that there's my Facebook page listed, and there will be the sample of the part of the rehearsal shown on that page, and the urgency of why we are asking this today is that, as Michelle mentioned, I am applying to the MAP fund, which is a multi-art production fund, and they do support a great amount. They usually only support 1/3 of the budget, but they release about $10,000 to $45,000 per project. Yeah, because
Project's getting quite elaborate. That's fine.
And
Okay.
they do support things with multicultural, multiracial, anti-racism. Those are the platforms that they stand for. My urgency is that the deadline is the February 15th.
Okay, well, we got there right under the wire.
Yeah.
So,
And the Fractured Atlas, I just received the email about an hour ago. They are waiting for the sponsorship from
Great.
the village. And I don't know that if I have to have the money in the account by 15th to prove myself, or if anyone can send them an email directly to say this is what's going on.
it looks like Debbie's leaning forward to help you with that.
So I can provide you a letter.
Okay, great.
On village letterhead stating
Okay.
that we had this conversation, the board was supportive,
Okay.
and that we will be allocating $1,000. So
That's
that
wonderful.
You'll have that for your grant
Great.
application.
How can I get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, we got that. We got that. Don't worry, Tamiko.
That's my job. That's my job. Okay.
So,
Got my number.
thank you very much.
Yes.
Michelle, we turned this around pretty quickly, right? Because it was like 72 hours ago that you mentioned this to me. And thank you very much, Tamiko and Ted. I'm glad everyone is able to come here today, and I'm delighted that the board is so supportive. So
Thank you so
keep us informed as we've got May 18th penciled into our calendar, but make sure that we're up to date in what you have
Yes, I
scheduled,
will
so we can
definitely
share
do.
it, and also we put it in the village web blast and stuff
That
like that,
will
so
be
we can
wonderful.
push it out as much as possible. Make sure
Oh.
we're fully informed of what's going on.
Just a side note.
Yes.
Ted have a performance coming up on this Sunday at the public library
Oh, really?
regarding to the Black History Month.
Wonderful.
So
What time?
At 2:00.
2:00 at the Asting Public Library. We can get a sneak peek at the wonderful Ted Daniel. Thank you very much.
Make sure you send it to the web blast. Also.
and that's a free event.
The library. All right. Excellent.
Glad to hear.
And walkable
Thank
for so
you.
many of us.
Yes.
Perfect. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we didn't need your vote.
Yes. No. Glad I was oh man.
All right. Okay. So, Chief Sylvester, I think you're joining us for this next topic. Debbie, you've been in touch with the folks at St. Anne's. They've got their list of processionals for this year.
That is correct.
And the list was available online, so we all had a chance to look at it. Is there anything? What more should we be considering in this year?
I'd like to just turn it over to the chief, and so
Sure.
that he can explain
It's his
what
team
his
that usually
experience
is making
right.
it happen
Yeah.
for us. Okay.
I mean, it's been my position from many years now that this is a heavy undertaking from the police department. It takes a minimum of 3 officers to do what we call the little loop, and over the years this seems to have grown. So the request so far is for 13 processions over the 12 months of this year. We've already done 2. And it seems that since last year or the year before, that the number of processions that cross Route 9, which has always been a sticking point for us, have expanded. I believe on here there's 4 processions, not counting Good Friday, that cross Route 9, and that's always been something that we've asked them not to do. Our conversations with the folks that organize these processions, and I won't say with St. Anne's because I don't believe that all of these groups are actually from St. Anne's, but that's the next topic I'll talk about, have not always been so cooperative. The last procession we had on the 19th of January, we had specifically let those folks know that they were not permitted to process from Dale Avenue, closing Dale Avenue and Croton Avenue in order to get to the church. We met them at Walgreens in order to compromise, and then they were brought to the church where they were told that that has to be the end of the procession. They said thank you very much. They had their service. They then processed on the roadway back to Dale Avenue, shutting down all of those streets without a police escort, with floats and several dozen people in the roadway. I know this when other village employees started sending me videos of the procession going. It's been my experience from speaking with folks that have either participated in or organized these processions that not all of these folks are in fact parishioners of St. Anne's Church. I believe that some of these processions are out-of-town organizations that come here and have processions in our community because we're more willing to, or I don't know if it's necessarily more willing to allow them to, but we're less willing to stop them. So I have two concerns about this. Number one, there's a heavy overtime component involved in this, and something that we've been doing for many, many years. And second to that, the number of processions that are going outside of what we've normally accepted for a normal route. Generally, the complaints that we get about processions is related to traffic and folks that get stuck on Route 9 waiting for, dozens or sometimes hundreds of people to cross those roadways. So in the board's consideration of whether or not to grant these processions, I would ask that St. Anne's be required to cut short some of these routes. For years, we've been successful with taking them up Ellis Place, around Linden Avenue, down Clinton Avenue, in Tompkins, Elizabeth, and around the backside, what we always referred to as the Little Loop. But over time, it seems that for some reason from Nelson Park is a very popular route. That requires us to close Spring Street all the way down, and then Route 9 while people come up and across. Also, walking processions tend to be not so fast moving when they come up after Church Street. It's a very, very steep hill, and when you have families and sometimes floats, that really draws out the length of the closure on Route 9. So those are my feelings on this.
I'm a little concerned about the unauthorized continuation of processions. I'm not really sure how to address that, especially if we're not sure that these are necessarily St. Anne's parishioners. I'm not really sure how to address that. You're grabbing the mic, so please weigh in, Trustee Herrera.
Oh, first of all, I did not know that, so thank you for letting me know. So usually, especially when we work with a institution or a church, was the rep invited to this meeting tonight? I mean, it's great to hear from the village perspective, but I know that Father Red used to come in the past along with Chief, and we used to have a group discussion. Were they invited? Were they told? Did just no one come? How did you get on the agenda?
So I guess I will ask that question to Debbie, because I was going to ask the same question. Is that something that you had had a conversation with Father Alvin?
So I actually just got the list in the mail. So Father Ed's not there anymore as a new pastor, and I've actually not met him.
Okay.
I'm sorry, when's the next one scheduled for?
We're off until April now, so we've got some time. We've spoke with St. Anne's on a couple of occasions to talk to them about the different routes. Usually they refer us to whoever their organizer is for that particular procession. So in my experience, most of these processions are not being organized by the pastor at that church. They're being organized by either subsets within the church, groups of people that want to have things. And, you can look at some of the phone numbers, and phone numbers aren't always indicative because people use area codes all over the place when you sign up for your phone. But some of these folks are out-of-state phone numbers.
So I think that, part of having an institution that's programming involves multiple people. Is part of what makes Ossining unique, and St. Anne's is a unique parish in Westchester County, particularly for particular cultures and communities, and that's why it attracts and embraces some of the different types of programming and processions and/or other events that they may have. Usually in a church setting, and also from experience at that particular church, there are different liaisons and point people, also people who work within the archdiocese, volunteers. It's a pretty complex structure, like any organized religion. So I think it's best if we bring them to the table and have a full discussion as to prior experience. The police department has always worked with them. The village always has. And it's my understanding that we look forward to working with them in the future. I think that we need to see how this kind of plays into the overall what they consider essential, what they don't consider essential. I mean, they have to meet us. They have to work with us a little when it comes to it, right? So you know what I mean, right?
No, exactly. Part of that, I guess, this is not the first time. Similar situations, we had a conversation with the chief before, and one of the concerns that I have, I guess, in a way, and I'm not sure how the chief does the schedule, but I remember many years ago, the schedule actually, the police schedule is actually done like the year before. And there's times that we tried to, the police department tried to coordinate a lot of these events through the year without knowing when those days are happening. So I think that's a challenge just within that. Keep that in mind. So actually I made a couple of phone calls last year, and I'm supposed to follow up with Father Elvin. So I'm going to be reaching out, and maybe we can set up a meeting. I don't know if you want to be part of that,
Sure.
Omar, or not, but maybe with Debbie, and we try to sit down at the table and we try to figure the best solution.
We've had several conversations with him, and he's more than cooperative.
Yeah.
I don't think that the administration at the church is the issue that we have here. I think that it's folks that are organizing processions under the heading of St. Anne's. Like I said, it's not unusual that this group decided to have a procession without cops and went back. And when we stopped and said, "What are you doing?" and they said, "We wanted to go back." And then, it leaves the police department in the precarious position of, what are we supposed to do at that point? Are we going to start writing tickets to religious groups? We sort of rely on respectful cooperation. It becomes difficult when people just outright refuse to follow, what rules we set.
Agree. I agree. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why we should have that meeting, because
I mean, it could be just a general meeting, sure, with some of the people that are part of, this different events that happen through our village. They could be. It doesn't have to be just Father Elvin. It could be them as well. It's just to get an understanding of what is going on.
But they also have to understand, and I know them, but that has nothing to do with it, is that if they give chief of the village a list of processions that's sponsored by St. Anne's, then it's sponsored by St. Anne's, right? So I understand that different people can lead it, organize it, do the work for it, promote it, whatever. But they have to understand that if it's being sponsored by the church, this is what we expect. This is what the agreement is. Have we ever done a written contract or understanding for either people who process or... I don't know what
they did, and they didn't keep it.
I mean, because I'm trying to I embrace especially religious assembly, and an asana is part of our identity. So I wanna, if anything, we want to make it better, and we want to make people of any religious faith to express themselves, whether it's through processions or walking or concerts or outdoor programming. But there has to be some sort of standard
guidelines.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a meeting with Omar and you and the chief if he wants to be, and Manny, right? And that if their name is on it, they have to have responsibility. If they don't take responsibility, you guys have to think about what happens when the first procession is out of control. Will you allow another one? There has to be there are many religious institutions. I mean, I appreciate the diversity of religions. I also appreciate that 50% of the population doesn't go to church, synagogue, or mosque. There's actually been a decline in participation. So not everybody views this as necessarily a good thing of not being able to get from point A from point B. They also live here. So this is really tough. Nobody wants to ticket religious groups. Everybody wants to invite, and we have multiple events like this. And last time we had this conversation was 2 years ago, and we sat here looking at each other going, what can we do? We just had we didn't come out of the conversation with what can we do about it. It's such a tough thing to manage. Maybe a sit down, and if somebody puts their name on it and requests something, then they have to help us. They have to call the organizers. Maybe it's 42 people, but maybe you'll find out who's organizing and say, you can't do this, and you have to go this way. And I mean, maybe you guys could meet with them and come up with a plan, because I think they've tried to do it in the past. And I think with the change from Father Ed, it also changes some of the opportunities, might be different. Yeah, I heard.
So it's just
They're going through
I think
an.
that's part of it, so
That could be.
organizationally, I think it's good for us to reach out to them.
I
now,
just have to
you know.
say that that Route 9 is really dangerous for people to be walking across that thing. Children, strollers. I mean, it's dangerous.
Chief, I just have one question. You said the one that's coming up in April. Is that
Two.
Two in April? Is that the short loop or the?
Oh, one of them is Good Friday, so that's going to be all the way around town.
Okay.
The other one is it says school to church, so that may only be down the block. So there's no standardization of what they do.
Okay. Great. Thank you for your feedback, Trustee Herrera and Trustee Casada. In your meeting, if you could, what I would suggest, when you have large processions, from the feedback that I'm hearing from Chief, there needs to be definitely like not only a key person, but when people are, if this is something that happens every year, people need to know. I would hope. I'm not going to suggest, but I would suggest that people know in advance. But if you know that there's going to be, say, 100 or so people, one of the ways to keep people online is like have a list of marshals, right? Like have people, and I know
They have that.
Yeah, for Good Friday. Yeah, Good
They
Friday.
have that for other processions too, but it also depends on who runs the procession. If it's someone else coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
One of the requirements.
But maybe even on the village side, that maybe we might want to have some clear cut guidelines, like for every Good Friday. I participated in Good Friday. It's
That's
people,
a special event.
Yeah.
That's
there's
not
people,
even. Yeah, that's.
yeah, there's
That
people-
is the most demanding of
Yeah.
all of these, and it's the one that we're not trying to get in the
Yes.
way of. Yeah.
Yes,
for
but
sure.
maybe we could kind of solidify, some idea, like if it's for every 10 people, or for every
Or
20
something.
people.
I don't think
We
you
just
can control
need
that
people
because
who-
that's just as a gathering. As you go through the neighborhoods, people just kind of
I
gather.
think more clearly what you're talking about is that rather than being able to submit a list and saying here's 13 parades we're having this year, I think each of these need to be submitted as their own individual event so that we can look at each individual one. And I don't know that that's going to happen. So
Just
No,
a
but
suggestion.
we need to figure out a way to push for it to happen.
well, I understand, but I mean the
Even
reason
if
I'm
it's
standing
a-
here is because the board approves this. So what I'm saying is that I don't know that it's going to be. In my experience, the board's not wanted to do that, whether it's this board or any other board. But I think that if we're looking to get a grasp on what's going on with St. Anne's, I think that you have to get more details from them, and we've had some success in certain times with that, and less in others. So
Well, I think what's definitely clear is there's new leadership at St. Anne's, and there's a desire for there to be a conversation
We have
with a
two
couple of
board
board members and our manager and our chief, and express a lot of the concerns that we have here and come up with some better way for us to do it. And having them do it all in one list, what was born out of us being notified sort of at the last minute, and so we do want to know what's the landscape for the year, but then how do we also have enough detail about each of the events? And so I think that should be maybe the goal of the conversation.
Agreed, and maybe Trustee Casada, you could help me out with this whenever. Maybe it's us meeting with the parish council first, right? That's all, so and kind of letting them know where we're at, and see how that goes.
It's just
And-
dangerous.
Do you want to reach out to them sometime?
Sure, I don't know what it is, but I'll ask them what it is, and I'll
Okay, that's
just
fine. I
email
can call
the
them
board
as well
and
tomorrow.
chief.
That's
And,
fine.
okay.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, also people have the sense that it's a village, so you let people know they can avoid the traffic. It's Route 9. It's not a village, and people are driving. They have no idea, and there's no way for us to reach any of those people. It's just not in the cards. And I think sometimes people somehow psychologically forget that when they go, it's not a problem. Just let people know. Send it out in a blast. Yeah, we can't reach those people. That's not a possibility. So it's Route 9 is more of a
Route 9's hard. I mean,
really tough to manage that one.
I had different opinions of Route 9, and it's right in the middle of our village. But
No, but I mean the traffic that
Yeah.
uses it is not traffic that we could reach.
But no. Just my only example would be, just like you see, in Sleepy Hollow, and this is a village that you're driving through, and there's programs and events that are going to happen, and that's going to be part of, and that's why the chief and the village are trying so hard to make sure it's planned as effectively as possible, and that Ossining is not just going to be a thoroughfare where you can just speed down, but
Well,
Well, no, I'm
but
just,
you know,
you understand my
not to you.
point.
Yeah, I do.
Can't
I
reach
do.
the people. If
Agreed.
we could, it might make it a little bit safer, but we can't.
Stuart, so a question, because the chief has come today and clearly to, I guess, to
You need
approve
something
the
from us, yeah.
procession. So do we have to pass a resolution? Do we have to come back to this if we're trying to do something a little different?
We changed the code, so
Yeah, I think we could, since nothing's happening before Palm Sunday.
we also changed the code. Remember, it doesn't, this is a
Managers.
manager decision, it's a manager
Oh.
approval.
For parades?
Only if the chief agrees.
Chief is not agreeing.
Changed that last year.
Right.
Yeah, the chief's
Oh.
not agreeing.
Oh, so that's why it's here. Oh, okay.
Well, actually, it wouldn't be here anyway.
Okay, Cornell.
Yeah.
You know, the reverse side of, you know, traffic being kind of inconvenienced and such is some people would really like to know about it in advance. It is
Oh,
a
I
really
agree.
festive thing. There's people in the community who don't know
I
this
like
is
it.
happening, and you just sort of get lucky and you happen upon it. But some people actually, you know, enjoy being able
So
to
part
be
of that.
present.
I was gonna
Absolutely.
Even if they have nothing to do with
mention
the
that, like,
religious
for the
experience.
December one, they started like about 3 years ago, and the first time it was really bad out there,
Oh,
and the day before, and it's a challenge. But a lot of people, some of the comments were, you know, how come I didn't know this? I would have
Right.
loved to be part of that, you know. So
Goes both
there's
ways.
a lot of opportunities I think we can,
Yeah.
they can engage with a conversation, and you know, I'm good with I'll reach out tomorrow, either you or me. We'll reach out tomorrow and figure something out for sometime next week. We'll put a couple of days on it, and we just
Right.
kind of move forward from there.
So it sounds like you want to have the meeting, because without some sort of a meeting and at least an agreement, I think a list of all of them is actually very helpful. But I think without an agreement on the next two, I'm not sure there's a sign off happening here tonight.
You know, something like this, again, the list is helpful,
That's
but
what
to me, it's helpful having it like November for 2000, you know, like a couple months before the beginning of the year. So our police department can actually schedule a lot of the stuff, and we can actually promote some of the stuff as well. So I think having it scheduled the year before.
Yeah, especially
definitely
since the one on January 19th did not go as agreed. So
Correct.
it's to be addressed.
So when Father Ed was here, he and I used to meet and go over each one of these, and he would say, "Well, I'm expecting this many people to come," and you know, he would give me all those details. So I didn't get those.
Okay. So
Ultimately-
Trustees Herrera and Quesada, you're going to try and meet with the council and then schedule a meeting subsequent to that with Debbie and the chief.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the Sound good?
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chief.
Awning permit?
So the last thing is awning, and it's Stuart, come on.
Simple and to the point. This is for the Peruvian restaurant.
Oh.
The HPC already granted the certificate of appropriateness.
Terrific.
The awning is already up. It should have come earlier. I apologize. So very simply, I would ask to put a resolution that,
Yes.
No objections.
thank you.
No objections.
But I'm okay with it.
I really don't like approving things that already.
Well, but to point out, it did go, what happened was it went to the HPC and the building department had it there, and and it took a while over there, and then it got lost track that it actually had to go.
So there's always somebody to blame. I just don't like the fact that we're retroactively approving something that's already in place. Obviously, we're not going to take it down. I'm happy to have the business, you know, doing well and
So,
great food.
identified.
okay, I'll have that next week.
Love the
Oh,
food.
great.
And Trustee Levin, you had a
I
final
did. I forgot to. I knew I wanted to do in the beginning, and then I hesitated and whatever. So the on Monday night there were a couple of meetings in the village. I think at some points, yeah, the three of us were there. But at 7 there was the Parks and Rec, and there were as many people there as in the other meeting. It was to discuss some sort of a memorial for Greg Jackson. His mom was there, family and community members and kids and stuff. So I'll cut to there's going to be a memorial. The group talked about it. It was quite emotional, actually, and I spoke to his mom, and we want her involved in making sure that she's happy with what's being done. But Marlene Cheatham, who is the chair of the committee, took some names, about 4 or 5 names. We want to let the kids who are friends, that sort of generation, put something together. and let them sort of come up. And I said very clearly, it's not about whether we'll do something. Everybody in this board, I think, is saying they would like to. They don't want to be the ones saying what you should do. You guys might want to come down to Marlene in case you want to follow, because Bill, as we heard, is out. Please let him know that thoughts are with him, and for speedy recovery. And so the superintendent wasn't there, so we sort of ran the meeting differently. But it's really like what, not whether we will. And Aaron Spring was there. He's coordinating some of this. If you could just contact, I just want to let the board know that something's being done. I spoke to Marlene yesterday. I spoke to Jackie Shaw, my counterpart in town, even though Snowden's a village park. We'd like to turn it into a little bit of an event. We have some ideas about calling a couple of groups, putting something together, because for any of us who have lost members of the family, you know, the first 30 days are crazy, the next 30 days are crazy, but after that, the phone stopped ringing, other things start. So somewhere maybe in the spring, early summer, they're thinking of doing something special. The memorial piece, Bill will be involved in that as the superintendent, and Marlene is sort of doing that as the advisor, and they'll bring it up to us. And so just a little bit of an update about the meeting that happened on Monday.
Thank you.
Okay. No exec? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I just want to
Thank you
know
very
who-
much. We will see you next week. This meeting is adjourned.